Morning, everyone. The clock on the wall is slightly slow, but I'm going by my iPad, which I think is accurate. Good morning and welcome to this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite at Winchester Guildhall. It is Wednesday, the 25th of September 2024, and the time is 9:30 in the morning. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. To my right sits my Vice Chair, Councillor Jonathan Williams. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Julie Pinnock, our Head of Planning, Daniel Lucas, our Legal Advisor, the case officers, who will change with each item, and Claire Buchanan from Democratic Services, who's supporting the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Turning now to the agenda. Claire, do we have any apologies and deputy members, please?
Thank you, Chair. No apologies for absence received. All members are present. Thank you.
Members, disclosures of interest, please. Councillor White.
So on agenda item 6, land south of Crab Wood, I have made a public comment on the application in the first consultation and can therefore be considered predetermined, and I will be leaving the room for that agenda item.
Thank you. Any further disclosures of interest? Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. We have land of South Crabwood. I'm the ward councillor for that area, so that should be declared. And also on item 9, that is an application by a fellow Lib Dem ward councillor, so I don't feel that I should be sitting on the committee from a point of view of public perception. So I shall stand off for that.
You will leave the room for that item.
I mean, I have no knowledge of this.
You're declaring that you have not in any way predetermined the Crabwood application.
I didn't even know that there was an application until I read the papers.
For which item?
For item 9.
Item 9, okay, lovely. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest in item number 12. Whilst it is not in my ward, I am a member of the parish council that covers Herstock as far as Littleton and Herstock Parish Council is concerned. I do not sit on the planning committee of the parish council, and so I'm just letting you know that that is the case. I shall remain in the room for this item.
You're declaring that you haven't predetermined it in any way?
No.
Thank you. Any further disclosures? No. Minutes of the previous meeting are on pages 9 to 12, held on the 14th of August. Can I ask if these are an accurate record of the meeting, please? Is that agreed? Thank you. Now we turn to the update sheet. Is that approved, members, to accept it onto the agenda? Agreed. Thank you. We now turn to the applications. I think Councillor White, you need to leave the room. Thank you very much. So item 6 on our agenda, land south of Crabwood, Sarum Road, Sparshot. I'd just like to say that the those members of the committee who were able to, which I think was most of us, but not all of us, went on, in some cases, a second official site visit yesterday morning. Luckily, it wasn't raining, so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we had been to see the site. So our presenting officer is Stephen Cornwall. Over to you, Stephen. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. So the application in front of members this morning is for a 20 megawatt scheme with a 40-year operational life, after which the site would be decommissioned and returned to agriculture. The site's 24 hectares in size. It lies west of Winchester City Centre, approximately 5.4 kilometres away. This plan showing the red line application site. It includes not just obviously the main site where the panels would be located, but also the existing field boundaries to Sarum Road on the north side, Sparshot Road on the east side, and Furley Mount Road on the southwest side. Just for clarification, whilst I've got this plan up, Chairman, the access to the site is the solid red line that members can see that loops around this group of buildings. The double red line, which is running due south through the middle of that plan, is the underground cable route, which I'll talk about shortly. So this is a plan of the main site. There are 6 elements to the scheme under consideration. There are some minor improvements to the vehicle access of Furley Mount Road. There's a new section of roadway extending the existing road that currently terminates at Pitdown Farm. There's the area of panels itself, the underground cable running back from the main panel area down to the 2 substation buildings that are located at the southern end of the site, adjacent the access point. And this plan shows the existing access point and the proposed location of the 2 substation buildings. This is a photograph. During the presentation, I'll use a number of photographs taken at different times of the year. The primary purpose in choosing which photographs to use was to provide members with the most clarity in the detail that we're looking at. So this photograph is looking at the proposed 2 substation buildings will be located the other side of this small group of trees, partially into the bank area the members can see there at the back. So those 2 buildings, fairly utilitarian in terms of the size and appearance. They'd be surrounded by some secure fencing with significant landscaping around that. So this is a photograph of the existing track that's running around the farm buildings. It terminates at a rear entry to the livestock buildings, and this is the strip of ground where the access would, excuse me, the new access would be formed, running up the side of that tree belt to its entry point into the application site in the south east corner. So that's the point where the new roadway would meet the main site. So the main site itself is approximately 595 metres from east to west, and at its most 385 metres from north to south. The panels would be fixed in position And obviously there, as members can see from the plan, there are elements of supporting infrastructure down the central area. That was chosen, as members will remember, when we stood on the western edge of this site yesterday morning. There is a depression in the ground, so the applicant's obviously taking advantage of that feature to install these inverter units. This is a plan showing the fencing, which is 2 meters tall. There are cameras placed at locations along that fencing. Those cameras are on poles which are 3 meters tall. The panels themselves would be a maximum of 3.1 meters above ground level. This is simply a photograph of one of the indicative transformers I was referring to that would go in that central area. So this plan is showing 2 cross sections. The top cross section is through Crabwood from Sarum Road into the site. So it's picking up the Clarendon Way footpath, which we stood on yesterday, and where if members can see where the cursor is. The proposal is to establish a 10-meter belt, scrub belt, on the field side of the Sarum Road boundary. There's then a 16.8 meter seeded open space before the fence line, and then there's a further 6 meters before the edge of the first panel. So that equates to a distance of 46 meters away from a position of a person who's on the Clarendon Way footpath. The southern cross section is taken through the plantation woodland. So this tree belt here would be 10 meters deep. There's then a 14-meter grass seeded area, and then a 4.8 meter gap before the edge of the first panel. Around the southern and eastern boundaries of the application site, it's proposed to create a 5-meter deep belt of planting with a 3-meter seeded grass strip. So this is a photograph obviously taken last summer 2023, stood on the edge of the plantation in the approximate position where we emerged from the plantation out into the application site. And the next series of photographs are a series of panoramic views panning around from the south-west corner of the application site. So that's looking back along the boundary to Piddown Plantation. And then we're panning round, and that's the depression in the site I was referring to. That's looking more eastward, again looking eastward. You can now pick up the tree belt where the access is the other side of that tree belt that's running up from the Piddown Farm group of buildings, and that's the buildings there in the middle of that photograph. And that's looking more south, and then eventually coming round to looking along the southern face of Piddown Plantation. In terms of ecological constraints, I apologise, Chairman, I just wanted to use this photograph to show members the rights of way in the local area. You can see obviously there's the Clarendon Way. There are various footpaths through the country park to the north, but to the south you can see in purple there and green a number of footpaths, but overall there are limited viewpoints where the public can look back towards the application site. So this is a plan showing the proposed construction routing. The intention is to come off the Romsey Road, and there would be banksmen or marshals to ensure that, or rather minimise traffic impacts on the last section of the access route. As members will have noted yesterday, the existing access is well used by related farm vehicles and traffic associated with the business users in some of the agricultural buildings. So this plan is showing the environmental constraints. The land to the north of the site is part of a site of special scientific interest. There's other conservation designated land to the west. There's ancient woodland around the application site to the north. And there are safeguards in place to ensure the proposal doesn't have any adverse impact on those designations. This is a plan showing the viewpoints that the applicant provided with us, which I will quickly go through. This is a viewpoint from down at the access in year 1, looking up to the site. This is year 10. This is a viewpoint from the Sarum Road, year 1. Year 10, where obviously the vegetation's developing. This is a viewpoint from Enmill Lane, in recognition that the site could be seen from other public vantage points. This is a viewpoint from the crossroads where we stood yesterday, looking towards the application site. That's year 1, and that's year 10. This is from the Tea Rooms car park, where we also stood yesterday, looking towards the application site. Distance is approximately 790 metres. Year 1. And year 10. Chairman, the following photographs were taken along sections of Sarum Road. This is a photograph taken in the summer. This photograph taken from Sarum Road looking towards the application site. Although the Clarendon Way people are advised to use the footpath, the official designation is along the road. And this is a further photograph again taken from the end of Sarum Road in the summer. The further footpath. This is the applicant's year 1 and year 10. Concerns were raised that the perception of the viewpoints from Sarum Road and Clarendon Way were altered depending on the season, and obviously we've taken note of this and included a series of photographs taken in the winter time. This is a photograph taken from the footpath. This is a more recent photograph because there have been concerns about felling of ash trees on the north side, on the north verge between the footpath and the road. As we noted yesterday, felling has taken place and opened up the views to a degree. We also noted that the southern verge, which appears to be more predominantly hazel trees, hasn't been touched at the present time. It's a further photograph showing some felling. And this is a photograph taken from Sarum Road, looking at one of the weak points in the existing vegetation on that south side of Sarum Road. Turning to heritage issues, there has been a concern about the impact of the proposal on the setting of the Farley Mount obelisk. So what this plan is showing is, if you take a line of sight from the obelisk looking east, the edge of the plantation woodland, as it were, deflects or obstructs the view of the application site, which is where the big red star is. And if members can see the cursor, that's the southwest corner of the main application site. And this is the photograph taken from standing on the obelisk on the east side, where there's a small seating area, undercover seating area, pointing towards the edge of the plantation woodland that's shown on the previous slide. Chairman, the recommendation in front of members is to approve the application subject to a legal agreement and conditions. There are some adjustments to the conditions in the update sheet, where we're proposing to add some further wording, and there's also a further suggestion that's arisen in the last 24 hours that we insert a new condition on the protection of archaeological assets to cover the possibility that in the event of the site inspection works, which have to take place prior to development commencing, that a feature, an archaeological feature is found that is thought best kept in situ. So that condition would initiate a management program to ensure that that feature is then kept. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We now turn to the public speaking. Oh, excuse me. So we have two objectors, Samantha Calhane and Rachel Waldron. Thank you, Samantha. That's great. So you have 3 minutes, and then if you wouldn't mind waiting at the end in case members have any questions or clarifications. Yes, don't worry. You can switch the microphone on at any time, and we won't start timing you until you start speaking. So when you're ready. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. I live, own and operate our family farm and farm shop next door and opposite the proposed solar farm. As landowners, we must manage our land in a way that is sustainable for food production, encouraging the increase of wildlife habitats, and be sympathetic to the surrounding area. We are unable to replicate or replace our precious countryside. There is no alternative to farmland for food production or a sustainable environment. As the fourth generation of my family to farm at Beechcroft, we've had to diversify to gain financial stability. To this end, we've created a holiday cottage and farm, shop and tea barn. The views and countryside setting are the main unique selling point of both diversification businesses, views which will be ruined by this development. Throughout the plan process, we have registered numerous concerns of the effects to our business, but have never been directly contacted by the applicant to discuss these concerns. In one report, it is stated that as Beechcroft Farm Shop and Tea Room is not an asset of community value, it has no material impact. This is simply not true. By providing a diverse income to our small rural business, we support many local producers, employ a number of local residents, and provide an area for the public to enjoy open green spaces, helping to increase well-being. The proposed solar farm will negatively affect our business, as well as reduce available land for food production. The key issue is the negative visual impact of this development on the natural beauty of the countryside, negating the public's enjoyment of an area used by thousands as a respite from the city and the stress of everyday life. We do not believe that the views of this site will be limited. It will industrialise the countryside, changing the landscape's character. The site selection report does not provide sufficient reasoning for the choice of this location, and the applicant's cherry-picking of case law is disingenuous. It appears that the applicant is being afforded unfair leniency on many points. This proposal is a simple commercial for-profit venture undertaken by the developer and the landowner without any concern for the local community. The planning officer admits that this proposal overrides many both local and national policies. but justifies this for the greater community good. In the UK, the declaration of a climate emergency has no legal impact. The efficacy of solar developments in reaching global, not just local, net zero targets has still to be proven. Should the Council approve this application, which we sincerely hope it won't, the Council must insist that the applicant mitigates this hugely negative visual impact by ensuring that the planting directly around the solar panels, especially to the east and south where there is no other vegetation, is of sufficient height of at least 3 metres to screen this industrial development, which will be on elevated undulating ground.
I'm afraid that's the end of your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mrs. Culhane? Sorry, no. Councillor Ashwell, thank you.
Thank you for your speech. Could you just give me an idea of what your hours of business are, please?
Sorry, I am not
Okay.
the farm, but they their hours of business are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, all day, 9 till 4, 9 to 5.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
No, no more, I'm afraid. Thank you very much indeed. If you could just switch off the microphone as you go. We now have representatives of 2 parish councils, so I'll give you each up to 3 minutes. So first we have Eleanor Bell from Hursley Parish Council. Councillor Bell, good morning. You know the routine. I think the microphone is already switched on, so when you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hursley Parish Council supports this application. Our comments are largely the same as last year. We're aware that the proposal is controversial, and even those in favour of solar often prefer them to be placed on rooftops. However, even using larger roofs or car parks, rooftop solar does not have the efficiencies and economies of scale of a solar farm feeding straight to the grid. This array is relatively small in comparison to others in the district, and grid capacity is limited. Winchester City Council has set an ambitious target to achieve zero carbon, and at parish level we encourage residents to use low energy solutions. A few years ago, Hursley Parish welcomed its first solar array at Ladwell next to the B3043, which is barely visible to passing traffic. The current proposal is on south-sloping open land and will be visible minimally through hedgerows, but more prominently from the Sarum Road Junction and Beechcroft Farm and Shop. It will not be visible to walkers on the Clarendon Way or from the woodland north of Sarum Road. In the past year, Hursley Parish Council has considered applications for solar arrays on IBM Hursley Car Park and also an off-site application for an array on land south of the village. These have not yet been decided by Winchester, but Hursley Parish Council is broadly supportive. We're a land-rich parish council with relatively few residential settlements, so we understand the focus on sustainable energy projects that has arisen. We note that most consultee comments have not changed. Hampshire Ecology has found that there will be minimal impact on the nearby SSSIs, has set out conditions by which biodiversity of the site can be improved, and we endorse those conditions. Similarly, Winchester Archaeology does not raise objection, but requires careful management at the time of construction to ensure any possible relics are preserved. Winchester Historic Environment has concluded that the significant Roman road is unaffected. Winchester Landscape does raise objection because it's a historic landscape of chalk grassland. We understand the concerns, but feel that these do not outweigh the benefit to the local area of an opportunity to generate green energy. Winchester Landscape also sets a number of conditions to mitigate impact, and we would endorse those. The property most impacted by the proposal is Beechcroft Farm Shop, which has an outdoor seating area very well used by walkers and cyclists, and with a clear view to the solar farm. The array is smaller than that originally proposed and further away from Beechcroft. We note and concur with the landscape advice that young trees and hedging plants provide better screening in the mid to long term. We hope that once installed, the array will not be as prominent as feared, and that Beechcroft customers may welcome this green energy solution. We support the application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Congratulations on being exact in your timing. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for Hursley Parish Council? No, thank you very much indeed. That was very clear. If you could switch off the microphone. Yeah. Next, we have Sue Wood from Sparshot Parish Council. Good morning, Sue. Again, you have up to 3 minutes, Sue, and you know the routine, don't you? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
I don't underestimate what a difficult task you as planning committee members have. Reading a report that is 87 pages long is no mean task, and I have to say a number of assumptions, justifications and overruling your own countryside policies, plus contradictions within the report, emphasise that the recommendation to approve this application is a huge task for everyone, a risk, and therefore unsafe. The application should be considered on the planning policies and the NPPF policies that are in place now, and not what the Regulation 19 or new NPF might say. The case officer report is confusing when it discusses both scenarios. The site selection allocation is not a robust process, but simply an exercise in justifying the current proposal. The threats of there being no planning policy to the contrary, and therefore objections should be dismissed, and the application approved is unacceptable. The SSA proves that 4 of the 5 sites considered were all on the same landowner's property. The farmer who owns the number 7 area has confirmed that they never contacted and supplied photographs of the very clear views that this intrusive application will have on the effect of her business at Beechcroft Farm. This fails to be included in the case officer's report, except to say that the tea room is not an asset of community value, means no material impact. Considering this is the nearest facility of its kind, and for the many visitors to the area, this is an insult. Innova also supplied information of a rejected application in Shropshire that was subsequently overruled at planning appeal. There is no mention of the case officer's report of the 2 cases that were not approved and also lost at the appeal stage because they were incited in areas that would have a significant adverse effect on the landscape and significant effect on the visual impact. Interesting, the 3rd appeal also cited it being on undulating landscape and that it outweighed the proposal in the planning balance. NPPF do not support undulating landscape development. We agree with WCC landscaping team that no amount of landscaping can mitigate the industrial look of this beautiful valued landscape. Despite asking for a condition for more mature landscaping, it is noticed that the applicant is refusing to do so. Their argument for not doing it is weak and implies it is a cost issue. Although the host parish council of this application is Hursley Parish, the address is Sarum Road, Sparshot, which is on the boundary of Sparshot and the furthest point from Hursley and the landowner's property, and the closest to Sparshot residents. As decision makers, I'm asking you to protect our countryside and consider rejecting this application for the many reasons you've heard today and will still hear. This application is simply in the wrong location. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. That's great. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for our representative from Sparshot Parish Council? No? Thank you very much indeed. So if you could switch off the mic as you go. Next, we have the Ward Councillor, Councillor Caroline Horrell, if you would mind coming forward, Councillor. Councillor Horrell, as you know, you have up to 5 minutes. If you could, that's perfect, thank you. When you're ready, thank you very much.
Chair, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to address the Planning Committee today as the councillor for the Wonston and Mittledever ward. And although the application is not in our ward, many of the residents who are addressing you today and raising concerns actually live in my ward and are most impacted. This is a difficult planning application, and as we know, this is the second time around. At no stage has anyone actually indicated that they are against solar farms. In fact, quite the opposite. They are keen that solar is one of the options in the drive for the City Council to achieve its green energy plans. However, what is clear today is that the location of this particular solar farm is completely inappropriate. And despite many options being brought forward, no progress has been made on the alternative sites. The proposed site impacts on one of the more local, notable sites in our area, used for recreation, walking, cycling, running, horse riding. And as you know, this was used extensively during the COVID period. Alongside the Clarendon Way, the Country Park, Crabwood, a SSSI, ancient woodland, all in all, a special place in our landscape in our district. It is clear from the officer's report, and thank you, Mr. Gonwall, for your very good report, that this proposal does not fully comply with the policies of the development plan that we currently have in place regarding the setting in the landscape, as indicated by MTRA 4, DM23, and CP20, and on its impact on heritage assets. Can the members of the Planning Committee please help me to understand why, when we've all worked so hard on the planning policies for this council, and indeed currently we're running for the finishing line on our new Regulation 19 plan to ensure we do have policies in place that do not turn this into a developer-led district, why would we just ignore our own policies? Surely there should be one rule for everyone in this instance. It seems the commercial aspects of this application outweigh some of the very serious policies for this council that we have all duly considered and agreed. I ask as councillors to think very hard about the message you're giving, not only for the current plan, but for the ones for the future. What faith will residents have in this administration and the consultation process for Regulation 19 if you simply overturn the policies in the current plan this easily? Why, in terms of the location, would you build a solar farm that is further away from the essential electricity source that it needs? We all know that the electricity source is located in a different part of the site, and there has to be additional connections made to the proposed location. Why not locate the panels close to the electricity supply? Officers, have you paid sufficient attention to the commercial aspects of the Beechcroft operation, and why this has not been more precisely analysed before the decision has been made about this application? Why have you overridden the impact on and requirements of another commercial operation rather than looking at the tea room and the accommodation and the farm for Beechcroft? Committee, do you agree that the application has been of poor accuracy and there's been much challenge to the quality of the information provided? It doesn't give me confidence when reading the papers and engaging with the agent. You may agree this application today, but it is us in this community and the residents who live alongside the site who will have to live with this for the next 40 years. I therefore ask you to uphold the policies we all committed to as councillors in the current local plan and ask for the solar farm to be located in a different location on the site, close to the power supply, away from the notable landscapes and impact of fewer residents and the commercial success of Beechcroft. Councillors, please overturn this recommendation and find a route through that works for all members of the district. But if you are minded to approve, please make sure there's a condition that the application has sufficient mitigation around the site with the appropriate planting and vegetation to screen this industrial development. Chair, Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrell, and good timing. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for Councillor Horrell? No, thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Finally, we have the agents, Chris Field and Nicola Jones, if you'd like to come forward on behalf of the developer. You have 3 minutes between you. Have you decided how you're going to be? So Chris is there to help answer questions afterwards. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. When you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you for giving the opportunity to speak on this important application. As set up by the Planning Officer, this application attended the February 2024 committee, which resulted in a resolution to grant subject to the Section 106. Your officers have provided a very thorough assessment of our application throughout this process, leading up to both committee dates, weighing up the limited impacts of this fully reversible development against the significant benefits, concluding with a recommendation for approval. The Council declared a climate emergency in June 2019 with a target to become carbon neutral by 2030. The South Lynch Solar Farm can provide a significant contribution to this target and could have been generating by the end of 2024. As stated in your officer's report, the proposal represents a 20% increase in Winchester's renewable capacity. The site is not only positioned outside of designated landscapes, but also away from community areas. The solar farm will deliver on-site biodiversity net gain with 81% for habitat units and 63% for hedgerow units. The site has been selected based on availability of a grid connection, available land, and land free of national and local planning designations. The site comprises of only 3% of the landowner's holding, where the remaining 97% will remain in agricultural use, helping to diversify and support ongoing farming. The site comprises of 85% non-best and most versatile land. As stated in your officer's report, the loss of BMV land is considered to be justified through the renewable energy development, and Natural England have not objected. National Policy Statement EN3 states use of BMV land does not prohibit solar arrays, and indeed the DEFRA UK Food Security Report identified that the biggest threat to food security in the UK is in fact climate change. We have heard from objectors this morning. However, it is useful to note the strong levels of support for this application, shown by members of the Winchester Action on Climate Crisis and local residents. 2023 was confirmed as the warmest year on record, with average global temperatures nearly 1.5 degrees hotter than 1990 levels. And the UK government committed at COP28 to triple renewables by 2030. As noted in your officer's report, while many renewable projects are facing long delays connecting to the grid, this solar farm can be built next year to help quickly achieve local and national targets. To conclude, our application presents a real opportunity to significantly reduce carbon emissions and to help tackle climate change. We have worked with the Planning Officer, statutory consultees, and responses from the public to provide the revised proposals. The project has support from local Winchester residents, and as stated within your officer's report, any harm is to be considered to be outweighed by the public benefits. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you will support your officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions of clarification? Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. You say that the planning application is for a lifetime of 40 years, but the panels don't last that long. So what are you going to do when you change those? Are you going to have to go into a different planning application because we don't know what size the panels will be in the future?
So we more than likely keep the panels which were put on initially. If some get damaged or anything, then the single unit would be replaced, but we wouldn't be changing any heights to the panels. And if we did, that would be under, I think one of the condition covers the approved plans, so we'd have to make changes that way anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the panels have got design life of 25 years because they degrade over that period of time. The second question that I have is, you say that there's possibility of grazing sheep underneath them. So what is the minimum height from the bottom of the panel to the ground?
We have it on the plan as 0.8 meters, 0.8 meters to 1 meter height, so that then sheep can freely graze underneath.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to walk underneath it, would they?
We do have that as like a standard across our sites, and a lot of the developers have the same height, which have sheep grazing underneath at that height.
And if you don't have sheep on them, how are you going to maintain the area? And I'm thinking about weed killers and that sort of thing.
So we have the planting plan as part of the application, so we've got the grassland sward underneath the actual array, but there is a condition for a LEMP to be submitted pre-installation. So we'll have that approved by the council, which will include all of the maintenance measures.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Laming. Do you have any more substantive questions of clarification? No. Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few, if that's okay.
First
First of all, pardon?
Succinct.
Thank you. 24 hectares, that's a very large area. To me, it is. So can you possibly tell me how many homes would this serve, if I may ask? Also, it requires to be close to a grid. So how close to that grid? And is there any chance of overloading the networks that could possibly lead to problems? How many panels will be installed on that particular site? And may I just ask, how much public consultation have you actually done? May I ask that, please? Thank you.
So on your first point on the number of houses, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is written within the officer's report. Sorry, I don't have the number to hand, but it is set out in the officer's report on the number of houses. So we can find that and clarify for you. Do you want to take the point from grid?
Yeah. So with regard to the grid overloading, so this application's very much governed by SSE with the DNO here, which is the distribution network operator. They set very, very clear limits in terms of what we can and can't put onto the grid, as well as requirements on us to submit harmonic studies on that, so that there's no way that SSE would let us damage the grid. The application they give us is subject to very detailed studies that they undertake prior to offering us the grid. So there's nothing the grid offer. So there's no way that what we're putting onto the grid will damage their network.
Yeah, so we did a community consultation prior to submission of the application back in 2022. And we also attended the Hersley Parish Council and Sparshall Parish Council to give a presentation on the proposals. We also held some virtual meetings with ward councillors, and during the application phase, post-submission, there have been 3 separate consultation processes from the council side.
May I? Thank you so much. Lifespan, I mean, some are 25, 30, 40 years, you're saying 50. I would imagine that there would be a gradual power reduction before then. And I mean, this is just me thinking this. Would it start before the 50, 40 years or afterwards? And I know there's a condition regarding this. So does it start before the lifetime span or after? I'm intrigued.
So there's been a number of studies on operational solar farms to look at the degradation of panels, and they found this to be very minimal across the lifetime. So that's why a lot of applications, not in Winchester, but across the country, are applying for extension of times because they previously got them only for like 25 years, say. So that's why we're seeking this 40-year period, because we think it's it's reasonable for the panels to not have any degradation which would impact the output of the site.
And there is a clear condition on the 40 years. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you. On page 37 of our report, a comment from Southern Water says it's possible a public sewer could be crossing the development. I don't know if you've had a chance to look into that at all.
We did do a utilities search as part of the application, so I think that was closed off during the during that phase. So the actual layout of where the panels is doesn't go over any utility pipelines.
Okay, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. We heard from the chair of Sparshow Parish Council that there were several potential sites on the land for this solar farm. Can you give me the details of the reason why this particular area was chosen, please?
So I think that was referring to the site selection assessment, and basically the land which is on our landowner's holding. This is the available land which was there to be used for this application, and it's actually their most unproductive area of the site, so that's why it was available to us for the development. So areas outside of that on holding are remaining in that agricultural use and are unavailable to us for the development.
It also happens to be the most undulating area within the land as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there are undulations in that land. I wouldn't say it's significant to impact the productivity of a solar farm. The land slopes slowly from north to south, which actually gives us a better sort of ability to produce energy on the site. It's also meant that we've been able to decrease the size of the sites, and we have done that over the course of this application to decrease the row spacings between the panel to be able to bring them smaller, to bring the actual site size down. So the undulating nature of the land won't impact the efficiency of the site in that way.
Now, the reason I raise the fact that it's undulating is because that's one of the issues which would vote against, which would come against the granting of your approval.
I think that's a question for our officer rather than for the applicants, if that's okay, Councillor Cunningham.
Okay.
Any other questions of clarification? Councillor Small.
Thank you. The application is for 40 years. After that time, assuming it gets put back to its current condition, what guarantees is there that that will happen? Obviously, things happen to businesses. Is there like, I don't know if there's one more for the officer, but is there like a fund to ensure that there's money there to return it to its natural state?
Yes, there is a decommissioning fund that's put in place. That is, perhaps the officer might be able to speak a bit more to this, that how it's going to be covered off. But there is one in place. There's an obligation between us and the landowner. So there's a decommissioning fund that's paid into over the life of the project that covers the decommissioning of the site at the end of the project, and that's held in escrow.
Just one more kind of follows on. And when it is decommissioned, the land that it sits on, how soon can that be returned to use for farming, I guess, in this case?
We would anticipate almost straight away. So there would be a small amount of land disturbance for removal of cables that are lower voltage cables that are within the topsoil horizon. But in terms of the panels themselves, that they're on a piled foundation that can be removed straight out of the ground with almost zero disturbance to the topsoil.
Good. If there's no more questions or clarification, members, thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seats. Thank you. Right. Mr. Cornwall, returning to you. Do you have any comments following the contributions from the public, please?
I don't, Chairman. I think the report covered everything that was raised. If members have any questions, obviously I'll assist
Indeed. Okay, so we now turn to questions on the report. Now, I know that you've all read, learnt and inwardly digested all of the pages, haven't you? So I will take questions on the entire report, but please tell us which page you are on before you ask your question. And if you remember councillors who were asking questions and I said that might be more pertinent for the officer, if you could indicate that you have a question, that would be helpful. So I think we have Councillor Clear first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Mr. Gunwar, because obviously, apparently I've missed it in the report. How many homes will be served, sir? Because that wasn't answered.
Thank you. The application refers to I believe, a figure of 4,700 properties per year would have the electricity generated by this site.
Councillor Cunningham.
Stephen, is that based on full 100% production from all panels, or is it on the basis of average, given the sunlight hours of the day and cloud cover and so on?
Chairman, I'm afraid I don't have that figure. What I'm relaying on is what was in the application.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. This was a question that was raised at the site meeting that we had yesterday. It was in regards to the impact of glint and glare from the solar panels and what time period throughout the day. I know obviously it was answered yesterday, but just for the rest of the committee members that weren't able to make it there, how long the glint and glare impact would be throughout the day.
Chairman, as members will see, the report does consider the issue of glint and glare, and the applicant submitted an assessment and the council engaged a specific consultancy to review it on our behalf. The assessment, which was further clarified during the assessment by our consultant, has indicated there is a potential for between 0 and 20 minutes impact on what's referred to as property number 5, but is actually the new agricultural dwelling at Beechcroft Farm, and the one we looked towards when we were on site yesterday. So they're talking about between 0 and 20 minutes per day at the end of the day when the sun is in the western sky. And the assessment balanced up that at that time of the day and with the sun in that position in the sky, the dazzle from the sun would be as much, if not more, than the dazzle from the panels. Bearing in mind, obviously, the panels are south facing and the impacted properties off to the east.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. On page 33, our landscape officers refer to valued landscape. I wonder what that means. I wonder if the officer can tell us what does that mean? Is it an official designation? And what weight should be given to this in planning regulations?
Chairman, valued landscape is a term that's referred to in the NPPF. It's not actually defined in that document. What your officers have done, obviously in discussion with the landscape officer, we've looked at the landscape characteristics of this area. We've also taken into account how the area is used and enjoyed by the local community and the wider community of the city, and reached a judgment that it should be accepted as valued landscape, which elevates it above, I hate to use the word plain landscape, but general landscape, but it's clearly not a designated landscape as what we've all known as an area of outstanding natural beauty or a national park would be designated. So it carries weight, and the report has considered that and taken that into account in reaching the conclusions as set out in the report.
Thank you. Can I ask what weight we should be putting on the new proposed NPPF in planning terms?
Chair, we haven't put any weight on the emerging NPPF, which I think the consultation date might be finishing today or yesterday. So we've determined the application purely on the most recent adopted up-to-date NPPF.
Thank you. Councillor Laney.
Thank you. I have several small questions. The fence that they're putting round it, we're talking about the species that are around there, and you've got brown hares that I've seen on the site. So how can they travel through the site when you put a fence around them? Because they are a declining species.
Species that
Neither did I. Could you just be clearer, please,
Yeah.
Councillor Laney?
On page 74, you're talking about habitat, etc. And one of the things you've got there is the brown hare as seen on the site. And my question is, how can they travel through the site when you're putting a deer fence around it?
Chairman, there is a proposal to install gates within the fence that would allow small mammals to go in, but the councillor is correct that deer wouldn't be allowed into the site. The overall size of the site in terms of its physical presence, in terms of providing a barrier to deer movement, isn't considered to be a significant adverse impact.
I'm sorry, I was talking about the brown hares.
Chairman brown hares could use the gates.
There are access points, apparently, Councillor Laney, for small mammals in the fence. It's in the report.
Yeah, thank you. On page 76.
Could I ask about planting? So we have discussed many times that the advantage of planting younger trees and so on, because they, in time, they establish more quickly and then they grow quickly, as opposed to larger specimens which take longer to establish, despite the fact that they present a larger barrier, as it were, initially. So can you just explain to me if it would be worth considering putting an extra condition in that perhaps required, say, 20% of the planting on the more sensitive sides of the development should be more mature trees to help with the mitigation, or is that going to be a pointless exercise? Could you just advise me on that?
Chair, I think we've obviously considered this matter in the report, and as you've indicated, there's this balance to be reached in terms of providing some more immediate screening compared to the longer term benefits of using smaller species when planting. At the moment, the applicant's proposing to use transplants, which are approximately 800 millimeters in height. I think that's 5 millimeters is correct, 0.8 of a meter. On balance, we've thought it appropriate to accept the applicant's position, which is again outlined in the report. But if members feel that there's a need for some more immediate screening, we could have a discussion, I think, in the speaking section, someone referred to 3 metre.
Yes,
I
I think one of the objectors suggested 3 metre trees perhaps
I
could
think
be put in the.
that would possibly be difficult in terms, not the least in terms of the expense or the practicalities of putting in something of 3 metre size. Well,
Why would that be difficult?
Well, the planting scheme at the moment is looking at a fairly, as you would do if you're using small species, putting in fairly multiple numbers in fairly tight rows and close proximity. If you were putting in larger species, you'd need to reassess the spacings. 3 meters, which I think could be a super standard size. My landscape knowledge is somewhat limited, but it does something of that size would bring with it additional complications, and clearly we would need to take advice if the applicant was willing to go to those lengths.
I don't think it's unreasonable actually to ask the applicant to put in a mixture of new planting with perhaps a 20% of more mature planting in terms of the trees rather than the scrubland that we're talking about here, because we are talking about lots of new trees around the site as well, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes, and filling out hedgerows and things. So, I mean, I would be happy to propose an extra condition that required 20% of the trees that are planted should be of a larger, more mature size on the particularly sensitive side. So I think we're talking the side that the cafe overlooks.
South and east, Chair.
Right, certainly east. What do members think?
I was just going to say, if I may, I totally agree with you, Chair, because if you can have plants that are more mature, they will have, well, to my mind, an immediate screening effect and a longer term resilience, I would think. So if it's possible and the applicant is okay with it, I would agree with it.
I'll just ask our officer what they think ahead of planning.
Chairman, I do think it's difficult because we do have a landscape enhancement plan which is set out in condition 14, and that references an existing plan. So if you now start talking about making a variation or modification to that, we're going to need a different plan, aren't we? And I do think there's something in what Mr. Cornwall was saying about, you know, I certainly wouldn't want to be agreeing to a particular height at this stage, because we want to look at the spacing of those, the species, how they fit in with the existing proposals, and also one of the issues with the more mature plant, the more the mature planting you put in, the more problems there are with failure and then replacement as well. So it's not just the initial cost, but it's also the cost of the landscape in terms of that failure and then that replacement demand. So I do have some concerns about that. I think what we would need to look at is whether there'd be an amendment to condition 14 that enables us to review that, Chair, and look at that, as opposed to being very specific with the maturity.
Well, I think if we could ask that we amend that condition to include a review of the maturity of the plants, bearing in mind the importance of the mitigation particularly from the eastern side. I think that I've had an indication from the applicant that they would be happy to include more mature planting in that particular side.
Chairman, with your permission, then what we might suggest to you is that an amendment to condition 14 that you delegate to your officers to agree the final wording of with you in consultation, depending on obviously the recommendation today and the outcome. But you know, then we could continue those discussions after the meeting and agree the wording on that.
I think the view of the committee is clear. Thank you. Councillor Laming?
You may recall that I did ask yesterday about some of these points, and CPRE have a very good plan on hedgerows, and that. And we should actually ask for the indigenous species which are climate resistant.
I think that those are already included in the plan.
Yeah, but it's the mixture that's important.
Yes, indeed. It's all included in the ecologist report, Councillor Laming. Right. But that was a bit of a side issue. So we're still having questions on the report, unless we are finished with questions. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. Page 76. There's talking about in the area where the panels of sloping mitigation be provided to consist of small check dams every 10 metres using Hessian sacks.
Sorry, Councillor Laming, can you speak more clearly into the microphone, please?
I'm trying to read through this so you have that. In the area of the panels where slope mitigation to be provided is to consist of small check dams every 10 metres using Hessian sacks. Well, they're not going to last very long. So we need to have something in there to make sure that those dams are maintained, because that whole farm area has had a lot of hedgerows taken out, and we get a lot of flooding down in pit around that area where this is the natural lie of the land going down into Hersley.
Chairman, condition 25 addresses surface water management. The final section of that does require, by implication, the reference in that condition to the measures being retained and maintained hereafter. There would be a clear expectation that whatever's installed is maintained for
the life of the site. Thank you. So that is covered in the conditions, Councillor Laming. Right, I think we're done with questions on the report. We now turn to the debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I, among other members that are present today, weren't actually present at the last application back in February, so it's quite nice to sort of see it from afresh. However, I know those other members that that were present will be looking at this afresh as well. I'm satisfied that views from public rights of way are screened sufficiently to not have significant impacts, and where there are in the public rights of way limited impacts on views through gaps in vegetation, I welcome the additional mitigation that also leads to a 63% increase in hedgerows and an 81% increase in natural habitats. I also welcome the additional condition protecting potential archaeological finds, especially as the site sits adjacent to Raymond Road, and the buffer that the applicant has produced from the road towards the panels. I understand that the majority of the site is in 3B agricultural lands, and welcome the reduction of panels, especially on the Grade 2 agricultural land. There are concerns regarding glint and glare, to which, especially towards the tea rooms, to which during our site visit, I know we explored quite extensively. So I welcome condition 20 on our update sheet, I think 21 on our report, however being merged into 20, that addresses the glint and glare impacts through the manufacturing process of the panels. Planning is all about balance, and no one policy outright overrides another. So therefore, we must consider the public benefits also as well to this application. Where adverse impacts are noted by the objectors and throughout the report, throughout the officer's recommendations as well, I'm satisfied that these are covered throughout conditions. Therefore, I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to deal with it in terms of the landscape and the planning policies side of things. On page 33, our landscape team state there's enough weight to suggest that the value of the land south of Crabwood on the surrounding landscape does lift this site above the ordinary, and as such could, I emphasize could be considered valued landscape. For clarification purposes, they then come across and say, I am of the opinion that the land and the surroundings of the Crabwood Solar Farm proposal is a valued landscape. So there's now no doubt at all. They've had opportunity to look at it several times and come down to the fact that it is now declared as valued landscape. Greater detail than they have on the previous comments, they say attempts to improve the screening credible, but falls short of providing substantial benefits. Marginal improvements are insufficient to offset the visual impact of surrounding landscape, especially for the first 2 decades. That's 20 years. 20 years. Yes, I am reading out the report, highlighting some particularly apparent issues. They talk about the particularly apparent along the Clarendon Way, off of the Serm Road. Photo simulations clearly demonstrate some significant views of solar panels cannot be hidden. These unhidden views exacerbate negative impact on the landscape and the overall environment. The application is likely to have a harmful effect on the character and tranquility of the landscape and could not be supported. The proposal also clearly is in total conflict with the 3 most important policies and the local plan. Policies relating to development of the countryside. LPP1, policy MTRA4, LPP2, policies DM23, and CP20. So it comes down to a fine balance of judgment on an individual basis, whether the identified harm caused to this prominent and visually sensitive valued landscape by its commercial industrialization is outweighed by the public benefit. In my view, I don't believe that it has. I will not be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I attended the landscape presentation yesterday evening by our officers, and that presentation emphasised the benefits to health and well-being that landscapes bring, especially wide open rural landscapes. This site is right next to Clarendon Way, which is a long distance footpath which connects Salisbury and Winchester. It's in direct proximity to SSSIs and cites importance for nature conservation. I am concerned about the negative impact on an outstandingly beautiful countryside location. In the sunlight yesterday on the visit, it was simply stunning. Due to the elevation of the land around this site, I don't believe that planting can mitigate, and I agree with our landscape officer that we need to protect this historic landscape. The photograph in the presentation from Mr. Cornwall, taken in Winchester, showed quite clearly that the view from the road it concerns me greatly. The hazel coverage, which is very sparse in summer along that hedgerow and provides a level of screening, is non-existent in winter. And I believe that the site will potentially be an eyesore. I received a report from the planning inspector yesterday with regards to an application in my ward. The planning inspector said that development that would not be conspicuous or prominent in public view, but that does not mean there is an absence of innate impact. And existing or proposed landscaping should not be relied on as a reason to screen unacceptable development, which would otherwise be permanent in the countryside. I believe that this application will not protect or conserve or enhance this distinctive landscape, and it is therefore contrary to policies LPP1, CP20 and DM15 of the local plan, and therefore I will not be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Clear.
May I say I'm not sure. I've got to be honest with you. I know Winchester Council have set targets to achieve zero carbon, which, yes, we should be encouraging and support renewables wherever we can to help this initiative. Yes, okay. But I'm looking also at policy DM23, rural character. And there's so much in that we should look at. I don't think we have listened sufficiently or enough, I'm sorry, to the landscape officer, which to me is a shame. We need to secure, perhaps you'll say we have in the conditions, a strong travel plan to protect all the local road network from unnecessary vehicle movements. Yes, this is a controversial application, but having weighed to all the arguments and listened, and I've gone through, and though I wasn't on the site visit, I know where the site is. I've been round there. So I'm so sorry, but I cannot support this. And the reason is DM23 as well, rural character. I'm sorry, but no, I can't support it.
I'd like to make a contribution to debate now. We did discuss this earlier, previously, and so I was concerned that we should all be able to come to this meeting with open minds, and I can attest that my nightmares and dreams all night about this application, and every time I thought about it I came to a different conclusion. So it has been a difficult planning balance. This site has been chosen because it can be connected to the grid now and not in 10 years' time, which is where most of the other sites that anybody is looking at are expecting to be able to connect to the grid. In 10 years' time, how much more damage are we going to have done to the climate? How many more times will Winchester High Street be flooded by flash floods? How much more damage will be done to our nature and our natural biodiversity? This application will give us a biodiversity net gain of around 60%. It will return hedges to a field that has been denuded of all its hedging. Climates and views are not in aspect, they do change over time, and this landscape has significantly changed over the years. Whilst we have opened down them, we do have, it would have been smaller fields back in probably the 70s, the 80s. So this solar farm is much smaller than originally proposed. It will disappear into the wood behind. It is not clearly seen except from a couple of public viewpoints, one of which will have its hedge significantly thickened, and the other is the local cafe, which we did visit and we looked at the view. It is a distant view of the solar panels. There are lots of other distant views from that viewpoint of, let's face it, we don't call it the farming industry for no reason. Most of the farming buildings that are put up these days do look very industrial, and the other plenty of farm buildings within sight of that cafe do have an industrial look. I think that there is going to be significant mitigation, particularly after a bit of time when it's all had a chance to grow up. And so I think that we need to think about what is going to have changed in 40 years' time if we don't grasp the nettle now, if we don't make these really difficult decisions, bearing in mind the difference between distant views and glimpses through hedges, which is what you're getting from most of the public viewpoints, and the ability to power up to 5,000 homes every year. I found it very difficult, but it is unacceptable that we don't look to the future and say, this is a small corner of a very big field. It is going to have lots of planting around it. It is right up against a wood. It's not going to impact the sink. It's not going to impact the Roman road. It's not going to impact any archaeology under there. It's going to be taken away after 40 years. It is not on the best quality farmland in terms of production. We need to make these decisions. We need to grasp the nettle. We need to accept that in order to carry on living the lives we live now, driving our electric cars, listening to the radio, the television, lighting our homes, cooking our suppers, we need electricity, and we need a safe, secure electrical supply, and this is going to help with that. So bearing in mind that we have declared a climate emergency, bearing in mind what this will contribute to achieving net zero, I will be supporting this application. Any other contributions? Councillor Lamy.
Thank you, Chair. I sat on the previous committee when we looked at this, and I've listened to what my colleagues have said, and I've just listened to what you've said. Yes, I agree that we have a climate emergency. We should take precedence. However, the climate emergency that we have with the electricity is the supply that's needed in the winter, whereas this is going to primarily supply power in the summer. Now, we also have a landscape officer who is giving us recommendations, and this site is quite predominant in lots of areas. It's sitting next to a sink. You can, as we saw, you can look to the south and see Fawley, so Fawley can see it from there. You can see it from the main road at Hursley. This is not a site that's hidden away. And on balance, I think I have to support the landscape officer's assessment that this is a valued landscape, and therefore I cannot accept this.
If there are no more contributions to debate, we will move to the decision. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of permitting this application, please?
That's 4, Chair.
And those against?
It's 4, Chair.
So with the chair's casting vote, that application is approved. Thank you. We will now have a break for coffee and return at 11:15. Thank you. Okay, members, shall we resume today's planning committee? So we move now to item, if anybody's here for item number 7, I'm afraid it's not on the agenda. It's been postponed till probably the next planning committee. So we're moving now to item number 8 on our agendas, which is Fob Down Watercress Beds, Abbotston Road, Fob Down. And our presenting officer is Catherine Watson. Over to you, Kat. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. May I just point you and members to the update sheet. A number of conditions have either been removed or reworded to take into account the removal of the tourist units from the application. So yeah, members may want to have a look at that. So the application is situated at Fob Down, which is a small settlement north, just to the east of Alsford. The current use is as watercress beds. So if you see in the top left-hand corner, we've got the red line of the site. The arc of the watercress beds can be seen there. We've got Fob Down Farm to the right there. And there's a deserted medieval village directly to the north. And here we can see the aerial view of Fob Down. Again, you can see the arc of the watercress beds. And then the surrounding features. So again, we've got Fob Down Farm, we've got the medieval village, Abbotston cottages, and woodland and grassland just there. So yeah, that's just to show the medieval village. Public rights of way run to the south and the east and northeast. And then this brown line here is the Candover Brook. And the stars represent the dwellings and sites in the surrounding area. And then the South Downs National Park is approximately 1 kilometre to the southwest. And here we can see the site in its proposed form. So the watercress beds, all of the hard standing concrete will be removed, and you can see where that they've been replaced with wetland. The original proposal was for a number of tourist pods, and they was spread out across this arc here. That has been removed from the scheme. So the scheme comprises of the conversion of the watercress beds into this wetland. To the north here, there's there's a band of trees. These don't form part of the application. They're proposed under the Forestry Commission to be enhanced with additional planting. So that comes under a different sort of regime to the planning. So here we can see the north part of the site. So we'll see there's a band of leylandii trees just to the north of the wetland. If we look slightly further south, there's buildings that are to be in red. They could be removed. The grey building there is to be retained, and then the access which leads out onto the lane. And then we've got the south of the site. So again, you can just see the layout of the wetland. And then the type of wetland cell, this is just an example of what goes into it. So we've got the aquatic community, we've got the fen meadow and swamp. It does say visitor accommodation at the bottom, but of course that's no longer going in. And then just some photos. So here we can see a view looking from the north down the lane, and we've got the site on the right hand side there. Sorry. And then here we can see again from the lane, looking into the site, the red arrow in the bottom right hand corner shows you where that view's taken from. And then a view into the access, along the access from Fobdown Farm. And then again another view from the lane, sort of south of Fobdown Farm, looking into the site. And then again further south along Fobdown Road, we've got the looking into the site as well. And then even further south, so that just shows the site in the far distance, the row of trees. And then this is from within the site to the south. So this is looking across the sort of overgrown area adjacent to the existing watercress beds. And then we're looking from the west into the site, from the neighbouring land. So again, the watercress beds are in this sort of area here. And then looking directly down the access from Fobdown and the buildings that you can see there, one's to be retained and there are the small outbuildings that are to be removed. And this is looking from the access across the road towards Fobdown Farm and associated buildings. And again from the access looking into the site, and you'll see here the row of Leylandi trees which are to the northeast of the site. And then these are the looking from the access into the site. So this small building will go. This building is to be retained, and you can see there's a number of sort of sheds, outbuildings that are to be removed. And then this is looking from within the site again towards the Fobdown buildings. And that ends my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions as recommended and revised on the update sheet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kat. Okay, we now turn to public speaking, and I'd like to call forward Councillor Margot Power, who is one of the ward councillors. You know, the routine councillor, but you'll have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'm sorry we couldn't justify a site visit on this application. I would have enjoyed it enormously. As you know, I have a close relationship with the white-clawed crayfish in the Candover Brook. And my concern is about the understanding of the impact on that species. They are at risk with this development. A couple of signal crayfish eggs on a contractor's boot could wipe out the population of the Candover Brook of white-clawed crayfish. They carry a virus which just kills them. And I'm seeking reassurance on the biosecurity measures, who will enforce that and how it will be policed, because we just cannot take this risk. There are very few habitats left of the white-clawed crayfish. We know that contractors in aquatic environments do work across multiple sites. And I want to know how my crayfish will be protected. If you could look into that, Chairman, I'd be grateful.
Indeed, we can do that this morning, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification? Councillor Laming.
I presume that these watercress beds are fed directly from springs.
There are multiple springs around the site. I believe they are spring fed. I have not looked into that.
Because I'm also very concerned about the crayfish, because I have a friend that lives up north.
Councillor Laming, perhaps you could address this to the agent of the developer.
I'm just asking a question of opinion.
Yeah, all right.
And once you get an infestation, it's terrible. And I think we all need to understand how we have biosecurity on that, because there have been instances where crayfish, the American crayfish, have been found in fields walking around.
Yes, well, I think Councillor Power did express concerns, and I think we will address that in due course. Thank you very much, Councillor Power. Thank you. And next we have the supporter Richard Osborne. Ah, Mr. Osborne, excellent. If you'd like to come forward, you have up to 3 minutes. And the microphone is switched on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and the timer will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. As you have heard, the proposals seek to create a new wetland environment to enhance biodiversity and to generate nutrient credits. For generations, the Grange Estate has been responsible custodian of the surrounding landscape. There is general concern within the environmental community that the mechanical abrasion of watercress and other salad leaves during washing and harvesting provokes the release of an organic phosphate pollutant into the watercourse. This can be toxic to fish, crayfish, and freshwater shrimp. The applicant is a member of the Upper Itchen Group, along with the Wildlife Trust and the EA, who collectively have supported the removal of watercress production, whilst recognising this is an opportunity to further enhance biodiversity beyond the river channel itself. Following extensive ecological surveys and pre-application advice from the council, the applicant submitted a planning application for the wetlands and visitor accommodation in 2019, albeit the visitor accommodation was removed from the application earlier this year. The proposals will have no physical impact on the watercourse itself. A dense belt of non-native Leylandii trees will be removed and replaced with a significantly larger area of new native woodland. The proposals include the removal of approximately 6,000 metres of concrete walling, weighing in excess of 1,000 tonnes. New wetland cells will create an aquatic environment stocked with native plants, which will attract insects, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and other important wildlife, significantly enhancing an already rich ecosystem. Construction management plans will be secured by condition to ensure that delivery of the proposed wetlands will be sensitive to the important watercourse and associated habitats. The applicant has done everything right. They've engaged with the relevant authorities and key stakeholders from an early stage and sought advice from the planning department. They've listened to local concerns. There is support from the parish council and no technical objections from consultees. The environmental benefits are clear, and therefore I hope you can support the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osborne. Members, do we have any questions of clarification? Can I just start off with the biosecurity question? So you didn't specifically mention biosecurity. Can you reassure us and Councillor Power that is going to be a top priority now and in the future, and how you're going to ensure that that is the case?
Absolutely. Biosecurity is at the forefront of the applicant's minds. First and foremost, that the means of protecting the crayfish and the watercourse as a whole will be delivered through the management plans that are secured by condition. So it's a construction environmental management plan, which will be dealing with how the watercourse is protected and how contractors will be required to meet certain standards to carry out the works before, and this has to happen before and be approved by the council prior to any development on site.
Thank you. Councillor White.
So as well as biosecurity with the species, the crayfish, there's also invasive species of plants. So Himalayan balsam, for example, if that takes hold, that's highly invasive and can really damage the watercourse. So in terms of the plants that are going to be used for the wetlands, is there biosecurity in terms of making sure there's non-invasive species and also native species of plants?
Yes, again, to be approved to an extent. Where possible, the intention is to save plants that have native plants that have grown on site naturally and occurred naturally, and use the existing wetland environment as a nursery to keep existing plants on site as far as possible. Clearly, any invasive plants that have grown up will be removed. The overall proposals have been designed by probably the country's leading wetland expert, who himself advises Natural England on wetland management and wetland proposals. So the applicant has gone as far as they possibly can in terms of getting the right advice and the right people on board to deliver the proposals.
Splendid. Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Kat, was there anything you wanted to add following the public contributions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Members, questions on any part of the report to our officer, please. Councillor White.
So I've heard of wetland restoration, well, watercress bed restoration projects before, but they don't usually involve grinding up the actual beds, so grinding up that amount of concrete. And I know the conditions have changed slightly, but can you just clarify the condition that's going to make sure that concrete dust, silt, soils isn't going to get into the Candover Brook?
Yes, thank you, Chair. What was condition 6 and condition 8 are relating to the mitigation for measures to protect the crayfish, but also we're looking at biosecurity. So that would cover any kind of mechanical activity on site, the removal of concrete, any removal of any kind of man-made features that are required to be removed to facilitate the development. The construction environment management plan will ensure that that's done in a sensitive way, and we'll have measures that will encourage, that will require the materials to be, the biosecurity measures to be sufficient to make sure that there's no sort of pollution from the construction or the demolition activities.
Any further questions? So, debate. I'd like to kick things off just by saying I think I'd be prepared to support this for the simply for removing the leylandii, if nothing else. Ghastly trees. But I think it's the sort of development of a derelict watercress bed. We couldn't have asked for a better approach, really. With the reassurance about biosecurity, I think that it's going to get general support and welcome from not just the local community, but the whole district. So, members, any other contributions to debate? So this application is recommended for permission. So can I see all those in favour of this application, please?
That's 9 unanimous, Chair.
All
Thank you.
members, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We'll just have a 5-minute pause whilst we, a 2-minute pause because the other officer is just arriving. Okay, so thank you very much. We now move on to item number 9 on our agendas. Oh yes, and Councillor Laming is leaving the room because he is a close associate of the applicant. Okay, so we are looking at an application at 70 Oliver's Battery Road North, Oliver's Battery, and our presenting officer is Cameron Finch, and perhaps you could explain particularly why this application has come to committee, please, Cam. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we have a rear single-storey extension, two-family home, new raised hard landscaping. It's been referred to committee chair as a member has submitted the application. Okay, so firstly, we have the location plan. So the site outline is in red there. So residential street up the top of Stanmore, not far from the main road in the junction. And then just for further context, we have the aerial view. So the site outlines in red there. So just more context of how it sits in association with various dwellings there and also the trees that are on site. So we have the proposed block plan here. So you can see the extension is just here where I've moved the arrow to. And then over here we have the raised area. And then the landscaping is just this small section here. This is the existing floor plan. So for reference, the rear garden is at the bottom of the plans. We can see here there's an existing raised patio area with steps down into the garden. And then we have the proposed ground floor plan. So the proposed extension is here, dining and seating area. The raised area is extended further back. And then we have the raised planting area. The blue box here is just to indicate where some existing vegetation on the land will be cut back, but is not to be completely removed. And then we have the elevation drawings. So what we can see, external walls finished with brick to match the existing, and then it's a metal zinc roof there. And then you see sort of slightly irregular sort of roof form there as it slopes away from the boundary. And now move into some images. So we have the front of the property is viewed from Oliver's Battery Road North. You cannot see the development from this view, but just to know the tree in the front there, which is a protected tree, but we have conditioned to be protected during construction. This is then the view of the rear elevation of the property. So you can see the steps down into the garden from the existing patio area. The view that you're seeing on the top right there is angled to the north to number 60 Oliver's Battery Road North. So that defined there by the fence and then on the neighbour's boundary, taller hedging. And then same views within the rear garden, but in this time looking south. And that is to number 72. So that concludes the presentation. Recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we now move to public speaking. And we have an objector, Mr. Soul. If you'd like to come forward. Oh, you're not Mr. Soul. Mr. Soul is not here. Right, we don't have an objector then. You're not here for this item, sir. No, thank you. Sorry, my mistake. Right, so we have no objector, no ward representative or anybody else. So we now move to questions to our officer. Are there any questions on the officer's report? No. Any debate? No. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see those in favour of approving this application, please?
That's 8 unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved. We will now move to the last item on our agenda, which is the report from the, yeah, we need Brian back. The Planning and Enforcement Appeals Quarterly Report. Sorry about this slight pause whilst we try and find our councillor again. I believe he's on his way anyway. So we now take the final item on our agenda, which is the Planning and Enforcement Appeals Quarterly Report. So perhaps you could introduce this, please, Julie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I think, as members know, we bring you a quarterly report of our success at appeal, because I think it is another good benchmark in terms of how local authorities are performing when you refuse an application or you have an appeal against conditions that are imposed. It sort of demonstrates our success at winning those at appeal. I think it's not, it's recognised nationally that you don't win every appeal, so it's about our target is 70-30, and as you can see in the paper on page 437, in terms of our planning appeals, we're at 33/67%. That's one case either way, isn't it? In this period, we've had 4 appeals dismissed, and what I'm always heartened to see there, Chair, is that the appellant's costs were refused. So whilst we were able to dismiss the appeal, we were also able to defend a cost claim as well. And similarly, whilst there were 2 applications allowed, the inspector didn't award any costs, which shows that we defended our appeal robustly in any event. So I think in terms of that, I'm quite comfortable. You'll see, Chair, we've started listing them separately because we have been more active in terms of our enforcement appeals. And we had 18 appeals in the period. I think it's a little bit misleading because a number of those were appeals that were linked to one enforcement matter. So it's probably just a little bit, you could argue that it was heard as one big major appeal at Carousel Park, Chair. But what you see there on the percentages, that 50% allowed, but then there were some costs awarded to us, notwithstanding that decision, and 50% were withdrawn. Similarly, they're all linked to the same appeal, so I don't think I need to go through those. And I'm happy, Chair, to unless there's a particular item you want to take, I'm happy to take questions from the committee.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? I think we did briefly discuss the one that was allowed, which was an overturn of the officer's recommendation at committee, which is item number 5. I think, do you all remember that one? Which was the large garage relatively close to the boundary, which some of you considered to be sufficiently overwhelming to refuse the entire application. I pointed out at the time it was going to go to appeal and be approved. So. And I think we did briefly discuss that. I don't know if anybody wants to raise any issues over that now. No? Or questions on any of the others? I think on behalf of all of us, I'd like to congratulate our officers again on an excellent performance in terms of, holding up our end, as it were, with the inspector, and an excellent record, really. Councillor Ashwell, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I've been to a couple of these appeals with the inspectors there, and the amount of work the officers have to put in is huge. So I do appreciate all the work they do to defend us.
Thank you, that's very helpful and much appreciated, officers. So if you could pass that on to the entire department, please, Julie.
Thank you, Chair.
Our appreciation of your success rates. Did you want to contribute as well, Councillor Laney?
Yes, I did. I've been dealing a lot with the enforcement team recently on one particular appeal. and they've been excellent. And the report they did on that particular property went way beyond anything I've seen before. And I think they need to be congratulated and patted on the back. We're very good at having a go at them for not doing their job sometimes, as we see it. But in this particular case, they were beyond the call of duty.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm sure that Mr. Pinnock will be able to pass that on to the entire department. I think that's the end of this morning's session. We will return at 2 p.m. for this afternoon's session of the Planning Committee. If you could switch off the recording, please, Claire.